we're thrilled that you are interested in learning about a really cool project that Professor Morris turned us on to, which we're eternally grateful. But the Knight Foundation, which is a news media outlet, has a prototype challenge grant opportunity for libraries and students and faculty and community members all over the country to compete for opportunities to get money to enhance some of their projects. And because Professor Morris was already acquainted with this particular program, he found out that the library would be very interested in collaborating with him. And then we immediately got Dr. Trowbridge interested in participating, and so voila, we had a team assembled to submit an application to compete with other entities in the country to get some money to do some fun things. When we were applying, one of the things that we had to do was create some media creation, especially a multimedia item, in order to help people understand what it is that we were doing. And so Dr. Trowbridge helped us put together a video with the help of a local media outlet, Bulldog, which some of you might already be acquainted with, to develop a video that kind of describes what we're doing. And later we will show you that when we get an opportunity. So it was in the spring that we did receive the funds, and we had a great team of people, several librarians, in addition to Professor Morris and Dr. Trowbridge. And we also were able to enhance some of the resources that we had right here in Huntington. We recognize that there is a wonderful, rich tradition and history of the African American residents in this vicinity. And we wanted to celebrate that and also find an opportunity to gather more materials that relate to that subject matter. And I'm very pleased that we have a guest today, Jeanette Rousey, who is an author who has authored some wonderful resources and also developed some multimedia content relating to Memphis, Tennessee Garrison, who is a luminary of Huntington, African-American female who has done some great work. So can't wait to let Jeanette answer a few questions about Memphis, Tennessee Garrison as you see the projects that we gathered throughout this particular event. So one of the things that we recognize about people today, and I said people, not young people, because it's young, old, doesn't matter where you're from, is the fact that we're completely married to our mobile devices. I mean, it seems like that it's almost an appendage. If I forget my phone in the morning and I'm almost to Marshall, I will turn my car around and drive all the way home and get it, because I feel like if I don't have my mobile phone, I'm missing something, or I am going to miss something. So it's now something that's very integrated in our daily activities and our lives. And when I think about not having that item, I don't even know what I did in college. I mean, we didn't have them then. I'm thinking, did I talk on the phone? Because I don't remember actually talking on a phone. So we know that that's something that everybody has and has readily available. So Dr. Trowbridge had already developed an app to help disseminate historical materials using GPS technology that's already in existence. And I'm sure you've probably used like MapQuest or the GPS on your phone to get to some place, or maybe you have GPS in your car. That's the exact same technology using, satellites and bouncing off maps to be able to locate historical materials. And he's going to show us that in the flesh here in a little bit. So we thought that's a great conduit for what it is that we want to do. We also, because the money was great and we were able to apply it to some of our projects, we were also able to do some research during this project. We were able to do presentations at local, regional, and also national conferences, and that was really cool because, at Marshall University, you guys know we've had some budget cuts. It's kind of hard to travel and pay for it throughout the year. So this was a great way for us to have funding so that we could go to, oh my gosh, San Francisco or other states and be able to present this wonderful project to our colleagues at the national level. Notice that we only did this in a few months. It was crazy busy in the spring of last year, and between all of the members of the team, we did something like 30 major presentations and took a ton of trips in a very short period of time. This is just a sample of some of the things that we all did. And you will notice that Professor Morris, for example, had some opportunities to visit other campuses. Dr. Trowbridge did as well. And some of the librarians also got to go to some regional meetings to disseminate information relating to our project. So we were really psyched about that. But how cool that we were able to be ambassadors from Marshall University to share with colleagues at other schools what great work and what different types of research can be had here. So we didn't hog up all the money, we shared the love with our students because that is a very important workforce, but also internship opportunity for students who want to be future writers, future historians, future teachers, future librarians, future archivists. So at least 5 students had an opportunity to have a paid internship with the project, and they were able to hone in their writing skills and definitely improve their research skills by providing excellent detailed information to create entries for the Clio app, so that there's lots and lots of wonderful content. Because we were participating in this in that compressed period of time that I mentioned, Dr. Trowbridge was able to see a huge spike in usage and also downloads for the app because he's able to see analytics behind the scenes. So that was pretty cool because that is also advertising for Marshall University. And the more we get the word out about how great your school is, the more students come here, the better our football teams and all of our athletic programs are. Also a wonderful way to promote Marshall University. It helps enrich your experience as students here. So we just have a couple stats here just to give you an idea of how the usage exploded and also how we were able to enter more materials, and our 5 students who worked their fingers to the bone really contributed quite a bit of wonderful, wonderful resources. When we completed our project, we had some wonderful things to show for it. And one of the reasons why I'm happy that Jeanette Rousey is here today is because she is using part of a collection, or has used part of a collection for Memphis, Tennessee Garrison that we've been able to add materials to. So we're very proud of that. So she can write another book and other scholars can contribute to the resources that we have. We are still working on the materials. And when you came in, you probably saw that there were some pictures of Huntingtonians from the last 60, 70 years. That is a wonderful collection that we did receive from a faculty member and a retired faculty member. We can't identify everybody. So one of the things that happens when you're an archivist or a librarian is you might receive something like that and you have to be a sleuth. So that's when the library community works with the community to try and find ways to identify maybe something that we can't put a tag on, or we get some pictures and we're not sure who's who, but so-and-so's great niece happens to remember or has seen that picture, and boom, now they can name all 5 people in the photograph. That really helps the researcher, because when someone like Jeanette or Dr. Trowbridge or Professor Morris sit down to get ready to write something, they need to have all the facts in front of them before they distribute information or publish a new article or book. So because we got quite a bit of stuff, we are still working on it. And librarians, interestingly, we count our stuff based on linear feet. So when we receive boxes, we don't say we got 10 boxes. Many times we say we got 200 linear feet of materials, because the stuff might be in a box, but we know that we got to find 200 feet of space in order to house that material as we process it. So as you can see, we got quite a bit of material. And we've just started to kind of sift through it and provide opportunities for students to help us gather those materials and identify them. In addition to pulling together some cool stuff for the content for the apps and also for researchers to utilize for their research projects, we also developed some lesson plans for the K through 12 community. I know that the standards have been somewhat controversial, but I am also aware that there are lots of teachers always looking for creative ways to incorporate wonderful topics that are important to our local community. And African American history is exceedingly important, because that is an area where, of course, as many of you are probably already aware, we have not had a very good track record of incorporating the wonderful stories that are so important to our region's history. So this is one method of exposing our young people in our town to the opportunities to learn more about these people and their contributions in so many different ways. We developed our lesson plans for 6 through 9 for social studies using the content standards that the state of West Virginia provides. We also had a few teachers contribute some resources and some editorial comments and also some ideas. So we have a pretty nice array of lesson plans that are available should teachers want to incorporate those into their classrooms right here. And one of the things that we feel is very important is to make sure that each of those lesson plans provide outcomes that a teacher can utilize in the classroom that match up. So kind of helping people do that great work as teachers. So hopefully some of you are thinking about being teachers one day. Now the next phase of our talk today, we're going to discuss the actual app. And I don't want to steal any of Dr. Trowbridge's thunder, but I will just give you a brief kind of overview and then he will show you the really cool stuff. But as we mentioned, this is a GPS composite type app that incorporates history and mapping technology that all of us are acquainted using. And what's really cool, and I'm hoping David will touch on this too, you too can become a historian who contributes to this particular content. So if you've ever hit Wikipedia, I'm sure you've never heard of that. Have you heard of that? Anybody heard of that? Okay. So I know you probably Google everything and you probably hit Wikipedia occasionally. I'm sure that many of your faculty, the faculty that you encounter in your classes are probably scandalized that you use Wikipedia. And believe it or not, most of the librarians also use Wikipedia, but you have to use it as a critical thinker. You have to be able to evaluate what you're seeing to ensure that what you're reading is in fact legit. So I would be remiss if I didn't, at least remind people of that, because that's where you can get in trouble. And sometimes people play around with the entries and they might say, so-and-so is no longer living, and that's not true. Or they add some crazy thing like, so-and-so was a, tap dancer in Budville, and that's not true. So it might take a couple weeks for them to catch up with the vetting of the resources. Well, the same thing is true for Clio. Dr. Trowbridge and his team of administrators, which is just all 10 of your fingers, right now, they will vet the content. So you can still contribute and it will really enhance what we have to offer. Right now, there are about 8,000 museums involved in contributing as well, and of course libraries also contribute. And if you have your mobile devices, take a moment to download it please while we do the switch over from Dr. Brooks to Dr. Trowbridge.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today to talk about this thing I created a few years ago that has become sort of my third daughter. And like my third daughter, demands a lot of my time and attention, and I'm also very, very proud of her. A few years ago, I was at a history conference, and when you go to these conferences, you go to towns you've never gotten to see before, and you usually only have a couple hours to actually see the town. So I'm walking around downtown Indianapolis, and I'm looking at all these monuments, and when you're carving into stone, you have to be pretty concise. So there aren't answers to my questions like, what is this monument? Who built it? What's the story behind it? How did all of this come? Well then, it's my 2 hours are up and I'm hungry. So I pull out my phone and I'm looking for a restaurant. I hit one app and I've got everything I could ever want. The menus, reviews, all the information. And it occurred to me that someone needed to create an app like this for history. I spent about a year trying to get other people to do it. And that didn't work. So eventually, I started to do it. One of the big questions that I had once I really started thinking about what it was and why I felt so compelled to do this thing, to create something that was going to be free for everyone and only cost me money and time, and historians, scholars oftentimes have negative views of mobile devices, so I didn't think it was going to do wonders for my career either. Why was it that I felt so compelled to do this? And I really thought about it. The question I really had on my mind, these devices that we have, Are they making us smarter? Are they making us happier? Could they? And I started to remember how I felt when I was 20 years old and discovered the internet for the first time. I was blown away about can you imagine, right? Can you imagine living your whole life without the internet, and then suddenly it's there? If anyone my age remembers the day they discovered the internet, I wanted to bring that sense of wonderment back. I wanted to create something that could help me discover things I didn't know I was looking for. Because Google's a wonderful tool if you know what to type in. But what if you don't? What if you don't know what you're looking for? And what if teachers ruled the world, or librarians ruled the world? Right? People that would answer questions and ask questions. What if they were the ones that built these things, and they weren't trying to make money or show you ads? What would they build? So here are a couple students using, we'll say that's Gettysburg, where they're at. And they're seeing the Battle of Gettysburg, and they're learning about it. They're being connected to historians and archivists to learn more about the place they're standing right at that moment. Let's see. All right. So what if mobile devices could make us more connected? Instead of what I think they do, is that they make us less connected to the world around us. As I'm sitting on the couch with my wife on a Tuesday night, our kids are asleep and we're both on our phones. What if it actually made us more connected to the world? What would it do? And so the idea was you could use these phones and you could discover the history around you. The backstory behind monuments and markers and works of art that you drive past. A bridge maybe you've driven over for 40 years on your way to work. Or maybe you work downtown and you never thought about what that building used to be. I work in a place called Harris Hall. It never occurred to me to ask, who was Harris? This was one of the students early on. As she was working with us more and more, she said, as I use this more, I start to see history all around me. This is a monument that I actually had driven past a few times. It's in Missouri. I'm originally from Kansas. Never noticed it. Monument to a dog. Right, what's the story behind this? Well, this was a 19th century court case of mistaken identity. Old Drum was a good dog. Old Drum was mistaken as a dog that had attacked some cattle, and Old Drum was shot and killed. His owner sued the man who killed him. It goes all the way to the Missouri Supreme Court case. And the case is incredible. The legal question was somewhat mysterious, and as the attorney for the aggrieved man is closing up his arguments, he realizes he's lost the jury. So he gives a eulogy for Old Drum the dog. It's 3 minutes long. If you can listen to it, read it, watch it with a dry eye, you've got no soul. I've got nothing else for you. It is incredible. And he coins the phrase, man's best friend. People around the world were so moved by this case that they sent money and stones to create a monument to the dog. And here I'd walked past it so many times. So that's what we started doing. Oh. Here it is in action in Charleston, West Virginia. You can see it's grown. This is a sculpture I had driven by many times. It tells you the history behind the sculpture, images. You want to know more about the artist? Click here. He's going to tell you about why he built this sculpture and what it means to him, all while you're standing right there. Here are images that people have made using it. You can sort of see the past being superimposed upon the present. So you can sort of have this metaphysical connection with the past. Museum, what it used to look like. Here it is next to the train. Here is a historic site actually being destroyed, so you can see what was lost. All these beautiful images contributed by people around the country. And here's what I hope it does. Connects you to what's near you. Maybe this statue here in Huntington that you've passed by without noticing. Here's one of our students learning the history of Carter G. Woodson and being transformed virtually to a library where he can learn more about Woodson. Or a student standing downtown in Huntington, West Virginia, discovering that there was a sit-in that occurred right here in 1963, reading about it, having links to more information, and actually being able to see videos of the sit-in while she's standing right there. Guys, I used this. I created that entry. I stood right there, and I almost dropped my phone. So I thought, let's try to connect people to black history, because that's been the challenge. I can connect people to the history of dogs and Civil War monuments. That's easy. How do I connect people to black history? Well, we got this grant, and we thought, this is going to do it. Well, not quite. People were most interested in the histories they already knew something about. All right, I have here a yearbook, right? You get your yearbook, first thing you do, you look for yourself, right? And then your friends. Well, so did most people in Appalachia. So if there was nothing but black history, they sort of turned against us. But as long as it included everything, they didn't not click on African American history. Remember, I had those analytics, I can tell you. They didn't start clicking, but once we piqued their curiosity, we told them the stories that they were already familiar with, they wanted to know more. And they did start clicking on the black history sites. I got some emails and some other messages, less than kind, from some people who look like me, who thought there was too much black history. And I waited a day or two to respond so that I didn't say what was on my mind at first. And I asked them, what more do you want in there? Had a wonderful conversation with a man. It got wonderful. It didn't start out wonderful. He was upset that the museum where he was a docent wasn't in there. It was a railroad museum. I said, okay, we'll put that in there. He invites me to that museum and says, we have a steam engine and we'll let you drive it. Right? And by the way, I checked out some of those black history sites and I'm really interested. Right? So what we learned is, if you want to tell, before you tell people the stories you want them to hear, you got to be able to tell them maybe some of the stories they want to hear. They already know, right? They already know they're interested. And then they'll become interested in the rest. Hidden histories. This is one of the things that got me really excited. These are some student projects early on at Marshall. And if you want to become a participant in this, we have lots of opportunities. There's internships, among other things. And I'm happy to stick around for as long as anyone wants to talk to me about this and talk about how you could work with this project. We used to always say there's no monuments to Nat Turner. Anyone know who Nat Turner is? What did Nat Turner do?
Slave revolt. He led a slave, one of the largest slave revolts in history.
Yeah. He slaughtered 31 white women, children, and men. I said, we don't have monuments to Nat Turner. As it turns out, we kind of do. This is in Charleston, West Virginia, in the black community, created late 1950s. So this one image tells me a whole lot. For one, either there are no white people who walk by this block in 1958, or they don't know that history. Probably both. Here's a different perspective about one of West Virginia's favored sons. I'm not from here. I'm a historian of African American history. I knew Senator Byrd as the man who filibustered the Civil Rights Act. So my perspective on Senator Byrd is very different from others, although I will defend him by saying that he did support education for history. But my perspective matched this perspective much more, but for most West Virginians, this is not. This is a protest in Charleston, West Virginia against Senator Byrd. Now that's in Clio, so people can see other perspectives. By the way, pretty intrepid students to do, this is what they chose to do, with their own name on it, right? Our older folks could take a lesson from that. The history behind monuments and symbols. Has anyone seen this monument? You've seen this picture? Anyone, does this have some sort of visceral reaction for anybody? It's in Washington, D.C., the Emancipation Statue. But as we're looking at this, anyone got a knee-jerk reaction? I know what you're saying. We don't have to say it, but it's a black man on his knees thanking Abraham Lincoln, who didn't free any of the slaves. This was funded by former slaves. There's got to be more to the story, and sure enough, there is. In the aftermath of the Civil War, former slaves pooled together their resources to build a monument to black history. It was going to be, at the time, one of the largest monuments in Washington, D.C. And there was going to be a panoply of characters, one after another, telling the story from Africa to slavery in America to freedom. Black soldiers, slave rebels, Frederick Douglass, that was going to be pretty expensive. They didn't quite raise enough money for that. The people who were behind this meant well. They were white, and they created this, believing it might lead to some sort of racial harmony. They meant sort of a white and black living together. That story you can't get any other way, except for Clio. Can tell you the whole history behind this. This is in New Orleans, where I'll be next week, talking about Clio. You can't find this anywhere on the city guides. Believe me, they don't want you to find it. Look at where it's located, next to railroad tracks, pretty close to the river. This is a monument created in the 1930s in honor of the Crescent City White League. The Crescent City White League, in response to the victory of African Americans in the elections of the 1870s, armed themselves and 3 different times, through physical force, took over the duly elected government of New Orleans. Imagine that happening today. We have our political disputes, but imagine the political party that loses arming themselves and physically forcing the people who won the election to run for their lives 3 times in a row. And 3 times in a row, the federal government comes and restores, at that time, the Republican Party, led by whites and African Americans. The 4th time it happens, the troops don't come. We don't think about this happening in the United States of America. We think this happened in third world countries. But in New Orleans and in other governments throughout the South, towards the end of Reconstruction, after the Civil War, when white people did not like the way the election went, they armed themselves and ran the victors off. In 1930, with federal funds, they created a monument in honor of those white people. Then, in the 1970s, when New Orleans has a black mayor and half of the city government are African American, they said, we need to talk about this statue. They form a compromise. It now says, in honor of Americans on both sides of the conflict. Right? History and historic interpretations change over time. Recently, we've had a long overdue conversation about the meaning of the Confederate flag. Here's one Clio entry for the integration, integration of one of the many schools in the South. In response to Meredith's entry into Ole Miss, they brought out Confederate flags. I don't think they were making an argument about states' rights, or excuse me, about Civil War heritage. Right? Our symbols and our monuments have a history behind them. So this thing can tell you the story behind those. And the best part, make history come alive. I can't quite turn this thing into a time machine, but you can create entries. You can create entries that have images that show people what happened and tell people the full story and include links to more and embed videos. And it's not just black history, it's all kinds of historic sites. People have created beautiful entries for theaters in their downtown that tell the story of their city through these places. But if you pick up your mobile phone and if you use this and you play around in Huntington, you'll see exactly where this sit-in happened, and you can hold your phone up and you will see the sit-in happen in front of you while you're standing right there. Right. And the last thing I want to talk about is the importance of getting history right and the story. There are apps out there that show you historic pictures that are not vetted. Unlike Wikipedia, you can't vandalize Clio unless I let you. Every entry you make goes into draft mode, and no one sees it but you and me. So I delete entries. Usually they're just places trying to self-promote more than anything. And of course, if a museum wants to promote themselves, a library, but there have been some car lots that I don't think are quite historic sites. But for the most part, people have done really good things, but I have to protect. So every entry is locked. You can't vandalize it, but you can offer suggestions. And if you've done good work, I just click a button. After reviewing it, I can see the first version and the second version. I said, they made it better. And then it includes your name as an author and your contribution. Right? So with Wikipedia, they have millions and millions of users. So you can vandalize Wikipedia, but in a couple of weeks, it'll change back. I don't have millions of users. There's just me and some of my friends and graduate students, and so it was important that we lock everything up. We do give special contributor privileges for museums and archives, people that we trust, where they can make direct edits. That actually makes my life a lot easier, and everything has the name of their institution or their class, museum, or library. So yeah, getting the history right. This is an Olympian returning to her home in Tennessee. They threw a ticker tape parade for her, and the next week locked her out of a Shoney's. So it tells you the history of the integration, the process of that. Let me see if I can actually click on this. Yeah, quick video showing two trains crashing together. 1896. Train wreck, literally on purpose. They built a special track to wreck two trains. Right? That was in Texas. Crush, Texas, adequately named, was the second largest city in Texas for one day. And the story behind it, actually, it's fun, right? But you actually get a lot of the story about the railroad. Why would the railroad do this? Well, there was only one way to get there. You had to buy railroad tickets. Only one line did it. So they promoted their railroad by crashing two locomotives together. Imagine living in this time period. This would be the ultimate spectacle. You would never see anything like it quite in your life. So a picture's worth 1,000 words, but 1,000 pictures are worth nothing without a story. Well, here, Edgar Allan Poe and Abraham Lincoln meeting together for the first time long after they both dead. That picture has been shared over 1 million times on Twitter, and it's fake. Made by Abraham Lincoln, vampire hunter. Right? So that's the big key with Clio, is that unlike all these other things, I'm a historian. I'm pretty serious about getting it right. There's 9,524 entries right now in Clio. There's 65 entries in draft mode. This is what I do. I do everything I can to make sure we get the history right. Now, I can't do that alone. So what I'd like to do is get your ideas about how to make this better, questions you might have. We're gonna keep trying to get grants and provide paying jobs for students. I understand exactly how important that is, but I would like to get your thoughts.
Any questions? No?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
What happened, you said there was like a period of time, like a year, when you're trying to get other people to make the app. What made you decide to make it?
Yeah, so I contacted the commercial developers, and they said, "Oh, we're already doing that." And I looked at what they had done, and it was they didn't care about it. They were trying. I mean, it was anything to get clicks. Google actually has an app like this, but they're just aggregating content, and they don't care about it being accurately placed on the map because they're trying to sell ads. You know, Google is not in the business of creating information. They're in the information of sorting it and linking it to people, and then making money off your information as well as people that sell ads. So I couldn't find anyone that was serious about the history, and that's when I kind of got scared of what might happen if I didn't do it. For 15 years, we cursed Wikipedia, historians, right? What a lost opportunity. Those entries could have all been written by us, and they could have promoted our work, included links to it. But for 15 years, I think we were so worried about people finding information from someone other than ourselves. That's not an instinct I possess. Clio is designed to lead you to other websites, libraries, museums. That's what I want to do. I want to connect people to the people who know. It's nothing more than a platform for that. What else?
Even I have just one.
Yeah.
What if someone in here, their hometown or wherever they are,
Mm-hmm.
may have something that they think might be of some interest, but they don't know anything about how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Can they come to you and say, there's this house in my
Mhm.
town, or there's this city hall or library,
Mm-hmm.
family or cemetery or something, how do I go about doing it?
Sure. They can. The person that, I mean, at that point, the place you start is your local library. Because I don't probably know anything about that place either. I've lived here for 7 years. I picked up some history, but not nearly as much as people that live here their whole lives. Every county has a local library, and there are several people that work there that are the griot for our history. They are the keepers of that. And their instinct, like mine, is to share what they know with others. You know, that's why I asked, what if librarians ruled the world?
I wouldn't mind that.
I like libraries. I like the instinct
You
of,
get more information you want, too.
yeah. You go into a, before Google, we asked librarians. We should continue to do that. That's the beauty of a library. If you want to know how to fix a car, you went to your library. And they say, oh, hold on, I don't know, but I'm going to find the answer for you. So if you want to create an entry and you're stuck, your local library is where I would refer to you. Yeah.
Let me ask you the second part of that. Let's say they go and do the initial research,
Mhm.
talk to their friendly local librarian, which I encourage you to do, and they get some information, and they're excited about it. Now they say, well, now what do I do with it? How do I make this app? What do they do? Contact you? Do they,
No, they just go, you can go right on the website and you click right here. Anyone can use this without creating an account. But if you want to add to it, we need to know who did it. So you have to create an account. Because unlike Wikipedia, at Wikipedia you can make edits and it's all anonymous. That's not okay with me. That's one of the big problems with Wikipedia. Is that the entry is not locked, it's not moderated as much as it should be, and that it's anonymous. So if you want to create an entry, you just click right here, log in, register. You enter, you know, the usual stuff. Click submit, verify you're not a robot, you know, and then you can create an entry. It'll go into draft mode, I'll review it. A lot of times I send an email saying thank you. It's not an auto-generated email. You will never get an auto-generated email. You'll get an email from me saying thank you. I liked what you said and here's why. We have 1,350 contributors, and yes, I do send emails to them when they contribute.
True, you sent me one.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm thankful, right? There will come a time when I probably can't, but hopefully at that point we have so many volunteers and other people that they would be the one. I would love to have stewards in every county in every state who reviewed the entries, and you know that would, you know, and I hope some of those could be paying jobs. At least temporary sometimes when we get money. Every once in a while we get donations too, and I always use that money to hire students to create entries. Usually in the place where the person donated the money. So, you know, a few months ago I was really looking for people that would donate, that would create entries in Iowa. I had a hard time. I found some people, but. So anyway, that's how you create entries. There's also, if you're a professor, there's classroom accounts you can create. So you can create entries as a group. And then the professor is the one that has the role of vetting the content instead of me. If you take any of my classes, you'll probably be using that.